Hank South ages in dog years when we get to this point of the recruiting process. Hank South does an outstanding job along with site publisher Tim Watts at covering Alabama recruiting for BamaOnline.com. How about it, Hank? You hanging in there with less than 24 hours to go to the start of the early signing period?
I am, Travis. I am ready for tomorrow. It's going to be nice to kind of put this behind us, but it is a really fun time, and it's always fun to be on BamaOnline on the message boards this time of year with all the excitement and the buzz.
Oh, man, the Roundtable right now at BamaOnline.com for the premium subscribers of BOL, that is the place to be, because between Hank and Tim, and really where it comes into play too, right, is the network of 24/7 sports as a whole. You get so much there at the Roundtable. Yeah. You guys do plenty, but you never know who else from around the network might drop in with a nugget or two, right?
Definitely, yeah. We've got a whole network of analysts, whether they're regional or that cover a specific team, but everyone's plugged in. We all work together, contribute what we have with each other, and it really makes for an overall like a comprehensive look at all things besides just through an Alabama lens.
Absolutely, and as I alluded to heading into our first break, it's flipping cold in Tuscaloosa this morning, Hank, but might it be flipping hot on signing day with a potential name or two being perhaps added to this Alabama class? And also Alabama has to be sort of guarded too, right, in terms of trying to protect a guy or two that it has committed to this point.
Yeah, definitely. All the buzz, the last couple of weeks, but especially as of this morning, is around Jace McClellan, the Oklahoma running back commit. He's been committed to the Sooners for well over 2 years, at least 2.5 years. He's taken visits to Alabama. He showed up on campus last summer, came back for an official for the LSU game. But the problem with him, and this has kind of been a theme with a number of guys in this 2020 class as things kind of wrap up in the early signing period, he just doesn't say much. So you never really have a great gauge on what's going through his head and everything. But, the feeling has been the last couple of weeks that Bama's really been giving him something to think about. He's been considering him very much. We've reported on BamaOnline since his official visit, really. I think before then, there's been some in his camp that have signed off on the idea of him going to Alabama, that they're certainly a factor for him, and it's just going to be one of those things that we're going to have to watch play out. And Nick Saban and Carl Scott visited his home last week. And ever since then, Bama's really picked up a lot of traction there leading up to this morning. We're actually projecting him to flip at this point to Alabama and join the signing class. I know the OU reporters have also done the same on the 24/7 Sports Network. So it's something we're watching. He's expected to sign his letter of intent tomorrow at 5:30. So we'll see if he does that before then. Some guys will set signing ceremonies and then they'll send him in beforehand. But definitely a guy we're keeping track of. And then on the flip side, obviously, as important as it is to add these guys to the class, or as hard as they push, they've also been working to keep these guys on board. And Bama's been fending off Florida for Timothy Smith from Vashon River High School in Florida. He's been committed to Bama since July, but he's been tracking this recruitment. It's one that he's visited Florida 5 times since he committed to Bama. And if you follow the visits, that's always kind of a telling, barometer on where things stand with the recruitment. But Bama's been pushing to keep him. He's been to campus twice, was on an official visit earlier this month. And it looks like, that there's some reason for optimism as to him sticking with the class. But these are recruitments that, the staffs are working on today and will be up until, tomorrow when guys put pen to paper. So a lot happening right now, and, a lot of buzz, surrounding Alabama recruiting.
As far as the very top guys at the list of Alabama commitments, the Bryce Youngs, the Chris Braswells, Drew Sanders out of the state of Texas, is there any concern about those guys as we head into Wednesday?
The guys you mentioned, no, I don't think so. There's been, it wouldn't be signing day without rumors. There's been some talk about Bryce Young and the buzz with USC that they're still pressing to keep him in the class. And, I don't think Bryce or his father or anybody in this camp could make it any more clear that the plan is to sign with Alabama. They've been interviewed several times about the subject. He said he wants to be at Alabama. Tua's upcoming decision has no effect on where he's going to end up. I'm going to be surprised if he does not sign with Alabama tomorrow. But I fully expect rumors to continue circulating, and it'd be a situation we're going to have to track and possibly quell on with some people. But I think Bryce is set with Alabama. I think the only other guy among that top tier of Alabama's commitments, Des Moines Kennedy, who's committed to Alabama, obviously, but LSU's been pushing for him. They got him on that official visit late in the process, kind of a surprise trip. But by all indications that we've gotten from people we've talked to close to the situation is that he fully intends to sign with Alabama tomorrow as well. So beyond Timothy Smith, Des Moines Kennedy, I think Bama's going to keep this class intact tomorrow as it looks right now.
Let's talk about a situation that may not show up as early as tomorrow as beneficial to Alabama, but Rakeem Jarrett, the 5-star wide receiver commitment to LSU, I guess, Hank, with an interesting self-update on Twitter yesterday that big picture-wise could be good news for Alabama.
Yeah, Rakeem Jarrett, the 5-star LSU commit, announced officially that he's not going to sign until February. And of course, looking at that, everyone assumes that good news. He's still considering schools like Alabama and Maryland in his recruitment, but then he came back out later and said his school doesn't allow him to sign early, and that's why he's not signing with LSU on Wednesday. But that, from what we're hearing, that's not really the case. There's a Clemson commit at St. John's College that's expected to sign early tomorrow, and Trey Williams. So the thought is you can sign early, you just can't enroll early, and that's kind of been what we've been going off of. So this really keeps it interesting into January because we saw Coach O and Joe Brady and those guys go in home with Rakeem Jarrett right before the early signing period. And, LSU wants to get him on board early and get this thing wrapped up. But it does not look like that's going to be the case. And now we're going to see Nick Saban go in home with him next month. And we're going to see Bama have another month to push for him. And this has been a guy that Bryce Young has really targeted in on as far as a guy he's working on to get in the class. We saw Rakeem take the official visit for the Arkansas game. So, if he does follow through and not sign tomorrow, this is going to be a really highly contested recruitment here for the next 5 or 6 weeks.
Is Rakeem Jarrett a guy who could be also keeping an eye on Alabama's receiving core in terms of early departures to the NFL? Do you think that could impact his decision one way or the other, depending on Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs III and, say, Devontae Smith, because that deadline is set for January 20th for those guys. And, of course, Jarrett now appears as if he won't sign until early February. How much of that do you think could play into the decision for a guy like Rakeem Jarrett?
I think that could certainly play into the picture. I think, and you look at LSU too. What are they? A lot of people look at who they have coming up. Miles Brennan is going to replace Joe Burrow. They have the 2 quarterback signees next year. Maybe he's waiting to see more with LSU if that's something he's interested in. But I'm sure he's taking into consideration what's going to happen with Alabama's receivers and their NFL decisions, and get kind of a better idea of where things stand there before he makes his final decision. So I think that's definitely a factor for him looking into it. But I think the biggest thing for him is I think Bryce Young and him being on board in this class has really perked his interest. And, if Tua did end up coming back, whenever he makes a decision, that could be another possible, plus in Rakeem Jarrett's checklist.
Yeah, you still have to consider the possibility, as you noted there, of Tua Tagovailoa at the quarterback position as well. We're talking with Hank South, recruiting analyst for us there at BamaOnline.com on a Tuesday edition of Southern Fried Sports presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier. Early enrollees, by your count, I guess, and BamaOnline.com's count, Hank, looks like more than a dozen set to make their way on campus, perhaps as early as some of these bowl practices. In fact, You reported, I guess, yesterday, or BamaOnline.com reported yesterday, that an incoming cornerback signee could be on the practice field as early as Friday here in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, we've seen this trend happen the last couple of years, especially last year. When Pierce Quick, Paul Tyson, and John Mechie, those guys joined the team for bowl practices. That they've been getting guys on campus a little bit earlier and getting them, into the program, onto the practice field. And we learned that Jaquez Robinson, the four-star cornerback from Jacksonville, intends to. He's signing tomorrow, and he's flying to Birmingham. The plan is to fly to Birmingham and practice for the team on Thursday. That's according to his dad and his head coach. So that's something we're watching. With him potentially getting to campus this week. But beyond that. It's going to be a large early enrollee class. I think the biggest one since we saw the 2017 guys come in a couple of years ago. Obviously, Bryce Young is going to have a semester under his belt. All your top tier guys are expected in early. Chris Braswell, Drew Sanders, Demoy Kennedy, Will Anderson, and then Roydell Williams, and several others. Jace McClellan, if he does end up flipping, he's also expected to enroll earlier. So it's going to be potentially a growing list. And, that's going to be big for Alabama going forward, having these guys get that extra few months learning the system, learning the playbook, getting acclimated to everything. Because essentially, once you start playing, once the season starts in the fall, you kind of already almost like a sophomore after taking in that first semester.
Now, is Jace McClellan the potential flip from Oklahoma? Is he an early enrollee guy, Hank? Do we know?
He is, yeah. So he would, if he does flip, he would be added to that list of guys coming in and, joining Roydell Williams, who also plans to enroll early.
Yeah, that would be very interesting, especially with Trey Sanders coming back off of injury. And I think if you're in to connect the dots, looking at Alabama with a 3 running back class, if you needed maybe any more confirmation of the plans perhaps for Najee Harris moving forward, I think a 3-back class might speak to that.
Right.
We're talking with Hank South here on Southern Fried Sports. As we let you go, Hank, kind of give us a preview of what to expect there at BamaOnline.com as we move through Wednesday and into the evening hours.
Yeah, it's going to start early. Obviously the bulk of tomorrow will be most of the guys. Alabama has a 25 commit class. It's going to be most of the guys signing. There's not going to be, a whole lot of new commitments, in my opinion. They've put a lot of work into this class throughout the entire year, and so a lot of the bulk of it tomorrow will be just guys signing. That starts off very early in the day. Caden Clark, Brian Branch, those 2 signing ceremonies are set for 6:30 in the morning. So we're gonna have coverage up first thing in the morning, if not 12:01 tonight. Previewing everything. The announcement times for all of Bama's targets are pretty much spread out throughout the day. J.J. Pegues, the tight end target from Mississippi, he's going first at 8 a.m. And then we have a little bit of a lull. There's never really much of a lull on signing day, but ESPN has some coverage with other guys like Philip Webb and Arian Smith, Jordan Birch, and then it'll all build up to Jace McClellan. But like I said earlier, it is possible guys will set signing ceremonies, but a lot of guys will also send in their letters of intent first thing in the morning, and then have kind of a ceremony, just signing a piece of paper that they already signed, or not signing anything at all, just being there for a ceremony. So, it'll be a very busy day, but we'll be here to cover it.
There you go. Hank South, Tim Watts, the rest of the crew there at BamaOnline.com got you covered. And as we talked about earlier, the Roundtable, the premium message board there at BamaOnline.com. It's where all the cool kids get together. So you want to do that as well. As always, Hank, we appreciate the time. We're going to let you get back at it. One of the busiest people on Al Gore's internet right now, Hank South, recruiting analyst for BamaOnline.com. Thanks, Hank.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.